Good morning, disciple friend. My name is Charlie Wallace. I work for Church Extension and Hope Partnership, and I'm here to share some exciting news with you today. First of all, since the year 2001, the Christian Church Disciples of Christ has started more than 700 new congregations that have reached more than 42,000 people for Christ. Now, can I get an amen? Let me tell you about an important element that we're just starting off this year, 2011. It's called the Antioch Project. The goal of the Antioch Project in the next 10 years, the second half of the 2020 vision, in those 10 years, we hope to plant 20 new congregations that will average 500 in average worship attendance. What I wanted to share with you now is 4 testimonies of 4 tremendous men that have been moved by the Spirit that have planted churches. One just 6 months out, and another one has reached over 13,000 people for Christ in one church alone. Enjoy the testimonies. God bless.
I love the church, but the good news is that God did not so love the world that God sent His only begotten church. I'm sorry, that's true. The church is an instrument. It's a tool. It is a group of people that God crafts and molds to be what it needs to be at a particular time and in a particular place. Right. There's nothing sacred about the way that it exists right here, right now. Right. God loved the world so much that He gave His only begotten Son. Yes. All the talk that we're doing right now about wandering around in the wilderness, trying to figure out what the world's going to look like, trying to figure out what the church looks like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of music we sing. It doesn't matter what the general board looks like. It doesn't matter what our buildings look like, because we're not going to be church if we're not making disciples of Jesus Christ. Right.
David, you need to see Betsy. I said, oh no, what is it now? She had herself composed, but she said, I need to talk to you, Daddy. I said, let's go out here. And we got outside the worship area just after worship. And she says, Daddy, I know. What do you know? I know. Daddy, I know God. I know God, Daddy, I know God. I know God sent us out here. This was good. I know God now. I know something had happened during that hour and during that time that she experienced the living God. I have a son who's 25 years old now. He knows a story in our family that my father and my younger brother restored a 66 Mustang. Big thing. I have zero mechanical ability. My son heard my mother talking about this story, and my son said, Dad, your dad and Uncle Mike owned a Mustang. You and I got to build a church. Oh my goodness! So after I understood that, and I knew that I did have the calling, this is what I said. God, if you call me to ministry, I do not want to do ministry the way I grew up, seeing my parents go through in their ministry. I'm not going to be dealing with these bad people in church, talking behind the pastor's back, talking bad things about the pastor's children. I don't want that. I don't want to be having my kids not having the shoes that they would like because I didn't have them when I was a PK in my years. I don't want my kids growing up not having enough as the rest of their friends have enough. I don't want to do that. If I'm going to go into the ministry, I'm going to go into the ministry knowing that I'm going to do something that's going to bring first and foremost glory to your name, reach people for Christ, disciple them into being persons that will be then able to serve you.
And I remember being 31 and just crying and saying, Lord, you called me. I know that there's a burning in my belly. I see this church that you want me to plant. And not plant, I didn't say that. I don't want to plant no church. I see a church that's already established. They're going to call me. They got a good budget. They're going to give me some good money. And I'm going to be able to take care of my family. And it's already going to be set. That's what I said. But God says that ain't going to happen. And He says there's a church, but you're going to have to start it. and I thought I heard him wrong, and then Dr. Frank Anthony Thomas at Mississippi Boulevard, where I was on staff, he called me, he said, there's a church called Winchester Heights, an older white congregation in Hickory Hill, and they have approached us about helping them sustain their church. And they had 12 people left. And they were in a rapidly changing community where blacks and Latinos were moving in and whites were running. And they were tired. And they said, help us. And after we wrestled back and forth about merging and change and all that kind of stuff, they finally said, look, help us die with dignity. Help us die with dignity. And we want to give you our church as long as you remain disciples of Christ. And they commissioned me and they said, Stacey, will you take this church and we'll give you 60 members from our church to go and start it and run, and I prayed about it and I stepped out on faith, and we met in the basement. We got our mission, our vision, our values, and our core beliefs together, and we prayed because I didn't know what I was doing. I went to church planners boot camp, and literally I went to church planners boot camp in Minneapolis. I learned everything I could about church planning. I read everything I could. But the most important book I think I read was Henry Blackaby's book, with Experiencing God. Yeah. He said, find out where God is moving and join Him there.
And there's some of you in this room tonight that need to answer this call. You need to step out of the safety of the box that you're in and serve the God that's calling you. And tonight, there are individuals in this room who need to answer that call. To step out. So that someday you'll be in this room telling that story, calling others out to serve. Amen. If the Antioch Project is going to succeed, and if we're going to fulfill our call to bring the gospel to people that will not hear the gospel without us, that won't hear the unique voice that God has given our church, that we heard Brian McLaren talk about tonight, it's going to take people like you and me, pastors who serve established churches, that have financial resources and people and making it available. Some of us here tonight are going to need to be friends to some of these planners. Something's happening in our church. Sometimes when you go through hard times, God uses it to break up the hard ground of your life so He can plant a seed in your life. And something's growing, something's happening. I feel it, it's brewing. New life. New life.